This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. This podcast also does not establish a standard of care, doctor-patient, or client relationship. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. And because each person is so unique, all listeners are encouraged to connect with counseling and medical professionals for assistance with their personal journey. All people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved.
Welcome to We're Not Fine. I'm Dr. Talia Jackson.
And I'm Doug Jensen. We thank you for listening every week to our deep and thought-provoking conversations about relationships.
Doug's least favorite word is gratitude.
It is not my least favorite.
But I am like...
Abundance is my least favorite.
Well, I am feeling an abundance of gratitude.
I knew you'd have to pull it in there.
It is coming up through the earth and into my soul and out the crown of my head. Now we should all do yoga.
Wow. That's really deep and intense about your birthing experience.
And now I'm out of the birth canal into a live podcast, which we've never done before. And we cannot believe that everybody is here and we're so grateful. This is exactly...
And Nick has had lots of caffeine. Yes. So we're good to go. Yeah, I see that.
I'm excited to talk about birth canals.
Okay.
We'd like to begin there, in the birth canal, and we'll have an experiential exit.
I would like to say thank you to everybody, very seriously. Thank you for coming. This is so much fun. You are all our closest people and supporters, so we're really grateful you're all here. I can't tell you two apart, and that's because you're twins. Okay. I'll just keep looking over there. So welcome, and this is our first live recording in a studio, away from our studio, of the We're Not Fine podcast. We are so excited.
We are
and with
so
our
excited.
first live audience. And it is one of my favorite people that we're interviewing today, Nick Harper. Yeah, that's you.
Oh.
Yeah, you can look around us.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm excited to have you guys here. This is awesome.
I know.
You've been incredibly gracious to allow all of our team to come into this place and create this studio in your studio. And I need to tell my personal story of you, and I hope I get through this because I cry every time I tell this story. So it was Art-A-Whirl just this last summer where I walked by your studio and I saw a piece of art in the doorway, and I could not stop looking at it. And it just haunted me for days and weeks. And then my friend Lissa, who is a friend of yours, introduced me to you in the back of your building here. Yeah. And I walked up to you and I started crying because I was so touched by your amazing gift. So after 3 months of being haunted by this picture called Serenity, which is back in that room, in the pink room, for anybody who wants to see it, I made the purchase because I need her in my house. And I am so touched by you and what you provide for art and how you touch people with your art. And we cannot wait to talk to you about it today.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm humbled to have you with us.
Thank you.
So with that, we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey in becoming an artist.
Yeah.
Wait, but first I was going to dive in.
Were you?
And say the story about how your work is so powerful and haunting and chilling and like pierces you through your soul. And every time I tell you that, you're like, ah. And I'm like, what's this? Ah. Like it's so deeply powerful. And I feel like you need to know that.
Oh, thank you.
And everybody tells you that, I know.
It is an interesting response,
It
Nick, because
is.
even today I was talking at lunch, because we did go to lunch before this to kind of meet everybody and the team.
Yeah.
And I told you once again that I could not believe I was sitting next to you because you were so
We're
admired
like,
by me. And
we
he's
know
like,
this
oh,
guy.
and I'm like, that's not a response to that. Like you were like groundbreaking, mister.
Okay, but now for real,
That was quick. The coffee's speaking.
we really do want to hear about your journey as an artist.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here and to be with you guys in particular. And it never gets old, like that reaction that people have to my artwork. After doing this about 24, 25 years professionally, that's something that is a constant, it's almost a constant shock that, something that I do touches people. So I love hearing that, and I'm still always awkward at hearing it because it's still new every time.
That's why you say,
yeah, exactly. But otherwise, it all begins in the birth canal. That's
always does.
As it does.
And Talia's head crowning is what I heard before.
That will be later. That's like in 15 minutes.
We're going to show a reproduction? Okay,
Yes.
wow.
I have
Okay.
photos. No, it's not that kind of a podcast.
Are we
Yet.
sure? We do have an OnlyFans page now. Do you want to join us?
I heard a moan from the audience.
Somebody moaned.
Oh, it was Andrea. Okay. Fun stuff. Okay.
I should have said, "Aw,
You should.
I'd love to be on your OnlyFans podcast. That'd be awesome." No, it really the whole art thing started when I was 5 years old. My dad passed away just a couple weeks after my 5th birthday, and that for me was kind of, even though I was only 5, it was like a life-changing experience and would change the whole trajectory of who I would become. And a big part of that was because while I couldn't rationalize it or understand what had happened, I knew something was different about me from all my other friends and my family. Like the next day, my best friend Nathaniel came over, knocked on the door, "Do you want to come out and play?" And I remember specifically saying, "I can't, my dad died." And I was like,
Wow.
and I didn't know what that really meant,
Yep.
but I knew it was like, okay, something's different. And so I always kind of felt like the other or an outsider amongst my friend group. Like I didn't belong. I'd go to a friend's house and he'd be playing catch with his dad. And it's like, oh, I don't have that. So there was always this kind of lack.
Yeah.
And, I went to a Catholic grade school and they would have mother-daughter lunches and breakfast and then father-son. And since I didn't have a dad, they'd set me up with a stranger from the parish as my proxy dad, which was just weird.
I'm guessing in
And I
all
feel
kinds
like
of
even
ways.
worse than not having a
It
dad
was.
there.
And the other kids would be like, "Who's that dude?" I'm like, "I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope he's safe. I don't know. Stranger danger. I don't know.
Yeah, we were already stranger danger.
Yeah, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if I'm supposed to go home with him after this. Like,
I
does
hope
he drop me
not.
off? No. And it was a nice thing that they were doing to try and make it not so awkward, but it was awkward. And so that just kind of always was a part of my psyche. And for me, painting, well, it started with drawing. That was my escape mechanism. I spent a lot of time alone, either biking or playing in the woods, and then coming home and drawing. And the process of putting pencil to paper, it was like I could create my own world and escape from this world. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it really began.
Nick, I'm kind of curious. I want to follow up on that grief process related to your father's death. You know, you talked about you didn't necessarily know how you were different from other kids. When did it dawn on you that you were, and that you had a loss that other people did not have?
It would probably be when I was at friends' homes playing.
Okay.
And their dad was present. And I always felt drawn to talk to the dads. Like I was hungry for a father figure.
Sure.
For that male presence. So I wanted to play catch with the dad or talk to the dad. And
Yep.
so that was probably the first time that I was really acutely aware.
I am curious, specific to that event, how that manifests in your art today, and if it does.
I think it does. I mean, most of my paintings are typically of women, and that was because I was raised by my mother. And then I also have 5 sisters. I have 3 brothers, but I was most closely three brothers. I forget. There's 9.
There's a lot.
Total.
That's
yeah.
okay. You've had a lot of coffee.
Yeah. Right. Totally.
Do you want
I
to
can't even
recite
remember the
everyone's
names.
name and birth date backwards from youngest to oldest?
I'd like astrological signs too, if you could.
Oh my God. Birthstones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I didn't even think birthstones. Thank you for adding
It's
that
important.
in the
I
Ruby
don't even
couch.
know my birthstone. Yeah. But I was raised by my mother and was close with my sisters. And so that was the biggest influence growing up was that female presence. And so with my artwork, I was always drawn to like the feminine principle, the divine feminine within artwork, within spirituality, that sort of thing. So it's kind of morphed its way into my paintings.
We're going to definitely want to go back to this whole gender experience you've had and how that impacts, because you have drawings of women that are very different than drawings of men.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I cannot wait to talk about that a little bit later, because of course
I'm going to have to lay down for this.
You are going to.
This is like a dissection.
There is a
Cut
reason
me
you're on
here.
the couch.
Right.
And I've got
Do I have
tissues.
to pay more since there's two? There's two doctors in the
Everyone
house.
asks
It's
that.
so that you can like inch closer to one of us or the other, depending on what the question
Who's
is.
uncomfortable?
I'll be
Who's
crawling
making-
over the back here in a second. No.
Be under the
So, of course, you also had a blurb on PBS. You did an interview on PBS, which I've listened to many, many times.
Yeah.
And also, in order, before buying my art, to be honest, I listened to it a few times. And again, it kind of pushed me toward it instead of away from it because it was so. You are so eloquent in how you describe your art and your process.
Aww.
One of yeah, you're getting better at this. But one of the things you said that was so intriguing to me is that you said that by watching other people and observing people look at your art, you are inspired.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to know, number one, how, and I also want to know, like, when you observe people, like what, and I'm kind of curious about your dad's death and how you observed other people playing with their fathers or having other men in their lives. Like, I'm curious about your observational skills.
Yeah. Again, I think it goes back to my dad's death. And that night in particular was so bizarre. So my mom was a church cantor and choir director and soloist. And so when he died, our house, which was tiny, there were multiple priests, nuns, sisters, lay people, like the whole church community came.
Now I understand your art. I'm kidding.
Right. Well, and instead of, because we were pretty poor growing up, lived off of, I remember waiting at VFW to get government issue food. And, but where was I going with that?
Observing people.
I interrupted you.
Observing
And all the
people observing your
coming
art.
in. Yeah.
I asked you where your observational skills and
Yeah.
talents came from.
But there was a reason I brought up VFW food.
You said there
It's
was
not
something
important.
really peculiar about that night.
The people that came really kind of rallied around us, so I was just in a room with all these strangers and people in nun outfits and priest stuff.
Men in nun outfits. And
It was
creeped
just so bizarre. And so I just kind of observed. And that's how, because I always felt like the other, rather than being a part of everything, I watched things play out around me. And then that throughout, as I got older, applied to once I opened up the gallery and saw how people interacted with art. But it also was happening while I was forming my concept of what art is and what it's about. And I really tend to think art is about, it's a reflection of our soul. So as an artist, it's my projection of my soul and learning about myself and surprising myself by what comes out.
Yep.
And then when somebody connects with a painting, it's because they're finding a soulmate. They're finding a piece of themselves that they didn't realize existed. So I think that's the power of art, is souls touching souls.
I want to say two comments about that. One is, I think when we have a traumatic loss, such as you did, and I don't know if you're willing to share how your father died, but because of the suddenness of it, I think we oftentimes learn very young to scan. I call it scanning. And so as you're watching all of these people in your house, as you're watching other people with their dads, I think you probably naturally developed an ability to take care of yourself and survive by watching what was going on around you and understanding it. But I will also tell you, and that is what you and I discussed when I made the purchase of that painting, is that she was it was my soulmate. And I appreciate that metaphor because it's very true. I feel ridiculously connected.
Yeah.
I have never felt that way toward a piece of art in my entire life.
Wow.
And in fact, for anybody who wasn't here this morning, as I have witnesses, Andrea, thank you. I walked back there this morning and I just bawled again. And I'm like, I know you did. I walked out and you go, are you bawling again? I'm like, yes, I am. I will probably cry every time I see it.
I mocked you for that.
I know you
a
did
little
mock
bit,
me.
but
You were so understanding. Like you would just say things like, "Aw," and now it's mocking me. So I'm not sure. There's been a transition in our relationship. Thank you.
we're graduating.
We are.
Yeah.
We're closer.
We can make fun of each other
Your comfort,
now.
your comfort level has increased. But that scanning can be really, really critical for a lot of people to kind of understand their lives and survive.
Yeah.
So pretty powerful story. Do you want to talk about your father's death?
Yeah, he had been sick. Well, and this is kind of a weird, spooky thing too. So I had a sister living in Phoenix, Arizona, a sister living in, I think it was South Carolina, maybe North Carolina, and one in Sioux Falls. And my dad had been sick for about a week and was getting better. And my mom talked to the siblings were like, should we fly home? Just like, no, he's getting better. It was just a bad cold. Well, they all got this feeling or vibe that they've got to come home. So they all came home, and then he passed like a day later he had pneumonia, and it got into his bloodstream. And back then, I guess there wasn't anything you could do for that. It was so he just passed in his sleep. My mom woke up when she didn't hear him breathing.
How traumatic.
Yeah, yeah. But it was the one time that all my family was in the house at the same time. And then there were weird stories about the light. My dad would turn the lights on and off at night to check on the kids before going to bed, and the lights would flicker at night up until the funeral. So I didn't witness that myself. I heard that from my siblings.
We have had that same experience as well. And my father-in-law, Rob's dad, hi Rob, he was living with us for a long time. And he passed in our home. He passed in his sleep. Yeah. And we do get a lot of lights flickering, and we always feel like it's him.
Yeah.
And we're like, what were we just talking about? What is he saying to us?
Yeah.
But I was sitting here listening because you were intuitively sort of answering all of the questions that I was going to ask you.
Oh, awesome. We're done.
We're done.
Doctor.
Oh, no, we're not.
Doctor.
Too soon. You wish. Nick's like ready to leave.
The tissue box is still full. We're not done.
But
he has the tissue box by him.
I've got mine stuffed over here in the arm of my chair.
I am a therapist, Nick. I always have tissues.
But usually for the patient, right?
Did everyone hear that?
We just need to pass it around to everyone.
I am so going to get you back. I'm changing questions here.
But I was just thinking about that soulmate. I can't even tell you how powerful that is because, and Doug was thinking for the longest time, he's like, why do I want to cry every time I look at this? Yeah. And there's something about art that it evokes the memory, the emotion, the feeling that it doesn't come to you naturally otherwise, I feel like. And it's your most vulnerable. It's like your soul, and then people are connecting to it. Yeah. And the stories that you're telling. I mean, what sense do you make of that when people are really drawn to the story or they feel like you're communicating to them? What are they connecting to?
I think there's a vulnerability with artwork. And like if you're just talking to somebody on the street, you're less likely to maybe tap into your emotions or let them flow. Whereas with art, there's no barrier. It's like, you're seeing a symbolic visual representation that's just going directly to the soul. And so that can just, there's no barriers to your emotion. Yeah.
And it makes people feel and weep and rejoice. I'm also really curious about the headspace that you must be in when you're painting. Yeah. Because whenever I'm looking at your paintings, I feel like I'm in a different headspace. Mm-hmm. And also like meeting you're so like lively and warm and jovial.
And dressed in black and gold shoes.
True. This is maybe symbolic of your entire personality. But I'm really curious about that headspace. And do you have to get into it and then get out of it?
Yes, definitely.
How?
Well, two things. The first thing is I'm kind of always on in terms of thinking and looking for inspiration or being allowed to be inspired. So, which since this is a podcast about relationships, maybe we can talk about how that's not always the best thing for relationships.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
We are.
Did I tell you I have tissues?
I'm going to need another box. But like even going to see a movie, like something silly like Transformers or something, I have a tough time just turning off and just allowing myself to be entertained. I'm looking at different things for inspiration and analyzing things in that sense. But then when it comes to painting, so I usually, another thing that's not always the best for relationships. I love to paint at night. For me, the magic hours are 10 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Wow.
I love when the rest of the world is asleep and things are calm and quiet and the energy is just brought really low. For me, and I'll paint in my studio, which is in the back of the gallery here, and I'll have all the lights off except for the ones that are just on the panel that I'm painting on. So I'm kind of in a meditative, weird cocoon, my own little, escape
I can
pod,
feel that.
if you will.
Like looking at them, I feel that. I feel like you painted them in darkness, literally and figuratively.
Pretty close, yeah. And then depending on what my mood is on that particular night, I'll either not listen to anything, and it's just my own thoughts. Otherwise, I'll listen to music. I'm very particular about what music I'm listening to based on my mood or what I'm painting. And then also podcasts, like I've been listening to this one.
Like, for instance,
I was waiting for you to say that.
There's a podcast called We're Not Fine.
I've heard about it.
Amazing.
I've heard about it.
I heard they're so good.
Goldilocks has been on it.
Goldilocks.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And I'll listen to other podcasts. I listen to a lot of weird conspiracy podcasts. Getting into
Like We're Not
cryptos.
Fine. This is all about conspiracies.
Right? Totally. So yeah, I entertain a lot of, again, because I was kind of out on the other on the outside, I've always been critical of just, in that scanning process, I'm just always like observing and critical of things and like, okay, does that add up? And then of course there's the weird stuff like cryptozoology and like Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra, Bigfoot.
They're real, right? I had a
think
Bigfoot experience.
This is like
Actually,
conspiracy
no,
podcast.
it was a skinwalker.
We have
Says
turned into
my
a
children.
conspiracy podcast.
You
Like
saw
I
It
was
was
in a minute.
real. I saw it. It was there. I was looking at it. It was super
That
creepy.
is really not true.
Okay, I want to hear this story.
Well,
You saw Skinwalker?
yeah, it's true. It happened. No one believes it.
As our producer's like,
Except for Kaya and Zoe. Allison, you believe me. Well, we were on the North Shore. Well, there's a part of the story I don't think I can talk about. But it rhymes with, I may have had a little bit of a gummy.
what, like a gummy bear? Or what are you talking
Yes.
about, Talia? Can you be more
A
explicit?
Swedish fish.
That's a lie. I'd like you to be honest.
Just accentuated this experience of, and also there's a lot of things that I feel like people shouldn't know about. But I'm going to just say,
Do we need a new episode?
There was a Uperlite rock that was glowing in the dark, and that's why we went to the North Shore to find this. I've already told
I know
the
this story. Yeah.
Would you like me to tell you again, but slower?
Again and again.
Slower with more detail?
And
Is that
if
what
you
I hear?
could, if you could talk about abundance and gratitude while you're doing
And
that.
then, when I was in the midst of my abundant glory, filled with
You're
the
buoyant.
joy of the earth, with my buoyant,
Your buoyant juiciness. Oh my God. Juicy's another
I
word you
was
like.
walking back to the car with my flashlight, and I see this like long, creepy figure, and I was like, "That's real creepy," but it must be my shadow.
And then you realize it was Rob.
And I thought so because it was like 9 feet tall and really
I know.
like tall and skinny.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And then I couldn't find it again with my flashlight. That's right, Doug. Wow. See? Look, that's a conspiracy look.
You know, you mentioned this
doesn't
being
believe
a
me.
conspiracy podcast, and look what happened. It turned into one. The power of Nick's energy.
Projection.
I know.
Creative visualization.
I'm skinwalker.
I kind of want to go back to Nick. I don't know.
What?
I want
If
to
that's-
listen to
Do you guys want to know more
Skinwalkers.
about the Uperlite rock?
Can you talk about how grateful you were for that juicy,
Gratitude, buoyance,
abundant,
yoga.
buoyant yoga
Yoga.
experience? That's a whole.
We're just throwing words out.
Okay,
Do you know what I want to go back to?
tell me.
The reverence for the female, the like feminine divine. Like, I mean, I was like, oh, say more. This was like incredible.
Yeah.
Oh no, I skipped your question.
You did skip my question.
Who's that guy over there who keeps trying to talk when I'm talking to
I don't know. One of us has ADHD. That's what we figured out. I don't know which.
Okay, I'm gonna
However,
let you ask your question.
on your topic of relationships, so you have mentioned that these are either anonymous people that you draw. They are sometimes figures that people may not recognize by the art that you do. or they're people that you have actually known.
Mm-hmm.
I'm most curious in the third. Like
Sure.
when you draw somebody that you know, do you let them know? Why are they an inspiration for you?
I think only one time I've done a painting of somebody and they didn't know I was doing it.
Was it me?
It's in the works right now.
Thank you. I appreciate
it's in the
that.
works
Let me-
right now. No,
A
typically
man with
they
a
know.
long neck and no eyes. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's almost always somebody I know, and I ask them if they'd like to pose for a painting, and
Yes.
um,
I'm sorry.
I do.
I will. Thank you. Twist my arm.
yeah, I ask them if they would pose, and usually it's somebody I know, and I'm looking for kind of a similarity in terms of, like, I'm not looking specifically for a particular look, like a particular sense of beauty, or, like a societal norm of beauty. I'm looking for something in their eyes and in their soul that is like, okay, that's something unique, quirky, weird, that I can pull from and work that into the image.
Nice.
So I'll do a photo shoot with them, and then usually I combine a number of photos into the sketches to create the actual finished product. But yeah, it's people who intrigue me and kind of capture my curiosity. Yeah.
I'm glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Quirky. You're welcome in advance.
Okay, now can we talk about women? So back to
I'd be grateful if you did that.
buoyant women.
I would love for you to talk about women.
So
Yeah.
5 sisters and raised by your mom.
Yeah.
And I didn't know until Doug told me, because I had only seen the beautiful paintings of women, but you do portray the women and the men very differently.
I do.
And
Yeah.
I'd love to know what that's about.
Well, probably the first thing, going back to the female energy, was that my mom is probably my biggest influence artistically. Like I mentioned, she was a church cantor, choir director. And after my father passed, so my mom had me when she was 48. So I was, and the next closest to me in age is 10 years older than me. So I was maybe a bit of a mistake, or at least a surprise.
A happy
at 48.
accident.
Happy accident. Going back to the birth canal.
That
It all
is
full
always starts
circle.
in the birth
Yes.
canal.
But so after he passed, then she took Suzuki lessons for cello at McPhail. And I think to date, she's still the oldest person to take Suzuki lessons, which is usually for 4 or 5-year-old children. And so I grew up then going to watch her do recitals, and she got good enough to play in a local community symphony. And then after that, she also became a master gardener, self-taught through library books. And she won a competition on PBS, the National Victory Garden competition.
Holy smokes, okay.
So we would have tour buses coming to the house and touring the yard. And then she got into knitting, then pan flute, then china painting. And it was like she was always reinventing herself artistically. So for me, that was just a huge inspiration. And especially seeing that, you're not bound by age or by place in life. You can always create and change what you do. And then my other sisters were also very artistic in gardening, video, crochet, crafts, all sorts of stuff. So that was a big part of my upbringing and a big influence.
And the women have such incredible detail and the eyes that are looking through your soul. And like I mentioned, looking also like they may want to kill you. So you might want to sleep with one eye open, and they haunt you maybe till the end of days.
Yeah.
But the men don't have eyes.
They don't have eyes.
It's like a
Most of
blacked
them.
out.
Yeah, and that was kind of a play on. So when I first started painting with women with long necks, that's when I became familiar with Modigliani, who's an artist that would paint long necks, and he always had white eyes. Instead of eyes, it would just be white. And there's a quote, I'm going to misquote him, but it's something like, when I know your soul, I'll paint your eyes. And so when I started painting the men, I was playing off of that notion that the eyes are the window to the soul. If there are no eyes, what does that say about soul? The nature of soul, does it exist? What is it? So it's kind of playing with that notion. And, I tried to paint men with long necks, and it just didn't work visually. It was a totally different vibe than what I was doing with the women. And so I knew, okay, I still want to paint men, but
with short and stubby necks.
with normal necks.
I'd like mine to be medium.
Medium.
Doug would like to first sketch out what he'd like his to look like.
I want to go specifically to the long-necked women, which is probably the best known trait of most of your paintings.
Yeah.
I am familiar with what it means because I've researched your interviews and whatnot, but I'm kind of curious if you want to share with our audience.
Well, now I want to make up something totally different.
You can, but I'm going to tell you what you said online, so I can correct you and tell you what we really mean.
What did I
That's what
say?
therapists do.
What did I say?
Is this really a question? Do you not remember what you said?
Oh, no, I do. Yeah. But that would be awesome if I'm like, I just made
Like
something
if you said
up
something
for the
totally
website.
different, I'd be like, that's not what you said.
Totally.
That's not
And I'm
what you
going to hold
mean.
you to it.
That's not
That's
how
not
you
actually
feel.
what you mean. And I'll tell you what you
We
mean.
like to gaslight
What you really,
our
really
guests.
want.
Yeah, so, I should premise this with, for me, when I started painting portraits again, when I originally back like 24 years ago, I was painting a lot of abstract expressionism, cubism, pure abstract artwork, but I wanted to go back and start doing portraits again because relating back to your question about how people take in artwork, I kind of saw the human figure as the universal symbol, and I wanted to be able to touch souls. And one of the things that, again, going back to an influence of one of my sisters, she took me when I was maybe 10 or 12 years old to the Minneapolis Institute of Art for the Van Gogh show. And we pulled up to the museum. And if you've never been to the MIA, if you're out in the internet, it's a massive building. It's gargantuan. And the line for this show was through the entire museum and out the door and down the block. So it was literally thousands of people. And I remember that so specifically, like the effect that this artist had on people. I knew I wanted to have even 1/100% of touching people like that. Yep. That would be success for me. So,
Well, you've arrived. Congratulations.
Thank you. Are you saying he's in the 0.01%? 0.11?
He is, or you are?
I am the 0.01%.
You are the 0.01%.
Doug is the divine feminine.
Thank you.
The
I have a
source
tiara.
of-
And I don't.
We do have a
You
tiara.
have a tiara.
And you have eyeballs.
Oh, I do. So back to
I
the
would
MIA.
paint you with eyes. I would paint you with eyes.
Thank you for painting me with eyes.
Yes,
I can have whatever neck you want.
totally. So,
Like a few different chins.
Did you say I have multiple chins?
The portrait, not you. You're perfect in every way. I'm just talking about what he's going to create. No eyes.
And your multiple
a
chins,
short,
you said.
stubby chin to neck.
You said chins.
Maybe the chin goes like right and like.
You keep going, Shelly. Like you
Is
have.
that called a urlata? You guys taught me. Herlata.
That's when your
Yeah. From here to here.
comes out.
No eyes in a herlata. I'd like to I'll pay extra.
I love my
for Doug.
curlata.
that would be a great title for a painting.
Curlata?
Yeah.
Oh, herlata. Oh, I thought
Is
it
it
was
Herlata?
herlata.
Herlata.
You say it in unison. I'm like, which one? The twins
The
are here.
twins are in the front row. That doesn't make it any more intimidating either. Like,
I
when
know.
there's twins. It's like,
By the way, there's a twin picture in that back room.
there is.
You two are the muse for it.
From
Oh,
The
look at it.
Shining.
I'm kidding. I'm so kidding.
It's from The Shining.
It's from The Shining as well.
All we need now is a skinwalker walking in the back.
And he focused on
All
the
I
herlatas.
see is my sweet husband re-pouring the Prosecco back there.
Okay, I got this. Thank God for my goatee to hide my chins.
But so I was distracted by skinwalkers and Prosecco and herlatas,
Twins,
but
yeah.
did you
Is
tell
that
us
a Mexican drink?
why
No, that's
the long
horchata.
necks?
Okay.
No, that was my grand plan to avoid that whole question.
Yeah, why the long necks?
Just go down this path. No, we'll come back to that.
We're coming back to the long necks.
But what I would say is that, so I wanted to paint portraits again, and but I didn't want to paint portraits that were documentative. So I didn't want to do just portraits of this is so and so in a particular place in a particular time, and be like, a stuffy portrait of a governor hanging up at the Capitol or a banker in a bank lobby. I wanted to paint something with potential for allegory and narrative and storytelling. And I didn't know how to do that until I read the book 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Okay. And it was my first real experience with magical realism literature. And that just kind of opened up the floodgates that I can mess with the human form and see the world or project the world through a lens of magic and fantasy that's grounded in reality, but that has more potential for storytelling. So that's when I started to really just play with the figure. And then also at the time I was really heavily getting into reading about Buddhism and esoteric mystical Christianity and some other religions and seeing this overlap between them. And so the head became like the symbol for our divine potential, the divine spark that's in all of us. And so it's being elevated by the long neck. And then the hands represented our worldly nature. So how we actually think about ourselves and treat ourselves, how we think about others, treat others. And so there's this, the neck is also pushing the divine up, but it's also acting like a visual tension or pulling apart between these two sides within, I think, all of us, or this might just be purely like self-portraiture, like being like, oh, there's this, but I'm down here, and this tension, this push-pull. And then it kind of related back to Buddhism in the sense that, like, if you look at the painting up close, you might see it as being a series of fragmented parts, like the hands and arms are usually fragmented from the upper torso, and you can see it as disparate pieces. But if you step back and look at it, hopefully it takes on a wholeness where each of the pieces are integral to each other. And if I did the painting right, it feels like a complete composition and has a wholeness, even though it's still weird visually and maybe bizarre, it's still complete and makes sense. Not logically, but on a different level. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if I failed at the painting, then it just looks like this guy doesn't know how to paint a body. Like, he doesn't know proportion.
And it looks like someone who was like chopped up. And that's like a different genre.
And when somebody says that, that tells me more about them than that's what you see in this painting, is it? Chopped up people.
Pieces in their entirety. That's all I see.
So Talia, into your fantasies of chopping up people.
That's right.
Shall we joke? Is that all you're going to say? That's right.
Wholeness. Wholeness is all I see. Okay, now
so Nick, just to confirm, that is what you said on PBS. So thank you for remembering.
Absolutely.
So
almost exactly.
I had to memorize that.
I know you did.
I read my artist.
I know you did.
No.
Well, now I want to circle back to this is the relationship piece, right? That like I'm picturing you long pause. This is where Nick exits like Homer Simpson into the bushes backwards. But I'm picturing you from 10 p.m. until 3 a.m. in your dark creative space. Mm-hmm. How does that work with relationships? Like you mentioned a couple times, like it doesn't really work well with relationships. But I feel like someone would have to, like someone who's falling in love with you knows who they're falling in love with. They're not going to expect you to keep banking hours, I hope. That was a different question.
It can seem romantic on the outside, but once you're in it, it's like, if somebody wants to go to a concert on a Friday night or go see a movie and I'm like, I'm going to stay and paint. Yeah. All that the veneer of that disappears quickly. And I also, because I run an art gallery, most of our events are on weekends and at nights, so that can be difficult. So yeah, it can be a challenge.
Do you ever feel, with all that you mentioned about being an observer and just really feeling yourself sort of on the outside, that a part of you disappearing into the dark studio is to be able to keep that quiet and that observational stance and give you some distance from other humans?
Oh God, yes.
You're like, isn't it obvious?
Yes, isn't that obvious? Yeah. No, for sure. Like
It's your
that's where I
quiet
feel the
space.
most comfortable. That's where I feel most myself. And I heard a great quote. Or a video or something, and I've always considered myself to be pretty introverted. And this video said something to the effect of, I always thought I was introvert, but what I found out is I just like peace. And when somebody gives me peace, I'm an extrovert.
Oh my God,
And
I love
that's
that so much.
very much how I feel. It's like if I'm around people that have that peace and grace and dignity about them, that's when I'm like, okay, I can be me. And
Yeah. And it doesn't drain your social battery. You could just be yourself.
totally.
It's a really nice way of explaining what we oftentimes label as kind of a black and white thing. Introvert versus extrovert. So nice spin on that. I'm kind of curious about this energy. When you talk about it, like you never turn it off. I remember probably about 5 years into my career, somebody asked me if I ever stopped being a therapist. So if I ever walk out into the community or the dining halls or the restaurants that I'm in, do I ever shut it off? Fuck no.
Yeah.
It just becomes such a part of my identity that I'm always scanning, I'm always looking. We've had this conversation and we do it slightly different. Like I just don't turn off. I don't know how to do that at this point after 28 years of practice. I'm only 35. I don't know how I got my PhD, but
I don't either.
I don't know how this happened.
And I don't know how you're like the same age as your daughter. It's crazy.
I know.
Should we go back to the birth canal?
No. No, it's a very soulful
mystery.
conversation though. But it's interesting. So, never shutting off. I am curious about your block though. Like if you ever experience a block in your artistic endeavor.
Block? Yeah, definitely.
Do you say artist block?
Yeah.
I was putting it like writer's block and artist block. Okay, that makes sense.
Just artist block.
Yeah.
And it happens from just burnout.
Okay.
I think I need to rest that part of me from time to time. But what I'll do is I'll start writing, or I also toy with music.
Okay.
So I'll funnel it into different things. I also garden. So I'm not ever not doing something creative output wise, but it'll change. It'll morph back and forth. I need a break from painting. I'll focus on writing poorly. I have a small vocabulary.
That's clearly not the case, by the way. I listened to your PBS interview and I was like, I don't know how he talks so eloquently. You're very, very wise.
That was all AI.
It was.
It was all AI.
I did notice. Like periodically there were like robotic.
Little glitches.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Static.
But you know what's
The
interesting?
Zuckerberg hairline.
Is that a joke about my hairline?
No, Zuckerberg. He looks like a robot.
I don't know how this is happening.
He's making that's going to be.
Is it because I've already bought your pic?
It always
In your
comes back to him.
I am picturing this portrait and I am
one of
really
me?
into it. Yeah.
Me?
The
Okay.
Zuckerberg hairline.
Yeah, I'm trying to you're coming up with ideas and inspirations. Doug, your hairline and your chins.
Again, that's going to conspiracy theory, though.
All right, we're going back to this energy thing. So how do you know when you're burned out? And then so you write and you do these things. Mm-hmm. How do you know when you're ready to draw again or paint?
It just kind of happens. Like I'll have ideas. Like I'm always coming up with ideas for paintings, but it gets to a point where I just have to start working on it.
Is there ever a time that you don't want to do anything creative to shut off? Or is that impossible?
Not really. Like I enjoy hiking. Like I do other things.
Yeah.
So I go to the gym now and lift weights and I run and I go hiking. I spend a lot of time in state parks. So another big body of work that I make are landscapes, and I call them nocturnes. They're mostly twilight-based, sunset-based landscapes, and those I get inspiration from when I'm out in the state parks.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's beautiful.
That's like a nice break from doing anything creative, but I'm still, even while I'm hiking and running, I'm thinking about stuff.
But it's a slightly different part of your brain, maybe, that's like waking up the other parts.
Well, and it's interesting too, because like I said this once about when I do an abstract painting, I feel more like an artist than when I'm doing my figurative pieces, because the figurative pieces, like the most artistic creative part comes in the drawing and the concepting of the piece. And then once I'm actually doing the painting, that's a lot of draftsmanship and craft as opposed to okay, I already know what the image is going to be. It'll change while I'm painting, and I'm open to that, but it's not anything like the process of just creating an image, either in my mind or on paper. Whereas with the abstract painting, I just sit down and paint, and whatever's flowing flows, and it's the combination of creativity and production.
Do you know what I'm really curious about is that, I mean, watching people watching your paintings and how, and we were talking about that vulnerability is what people are connecting to. Does it ever, I mean, for someone so private and introverted and really enjoying your own head and your own space, what is it like for you to live in that vulnerability? Like, how do you handle that?
Now I'm fine with it, but it took a long time to like figure that out and navigate that. Because I have my own gallery, I'd be able to be here the whole time when my show was up and see everybody coming in, and particularly at events like Art World, which is a big art crawl in Northeast Minneapolis once a year. There's thousands of people coming through, and many of them have never been exposed to art or aren't really that involved in the arts. So it's seeing people, this is out of their element for them, and so they're seeing my work. Or even like the work that's up now. I have a great show by Alex Kuno up, and seeing their reactions at first, it took me a lot to get used to that, because you are vulnerable and you hear all the conversations, and if they don't know who you are, you're hearing them talk and dissect the art, the psychology of the artist, and all of this. So now
or if you're like Doug, coming to you weeping, right? I mean, but I'm sure that's not the first time.
I've had a few criers.
A few weepers.
Now I'm a crier.
A weeper.
A weeper with multiple
What is better
chins.
sounding, crier or weeper?
And a hairline. I think an emotive is what I'm looking for.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
That's perfect. Emotive.
You can call my piece that once you do me.
Ooh, nice. Emotive.
Emotive.
I like that.
Okay, good.
No, I tear up at artwork. So, yeah.
This is the first one ever, I'll tell you. I have never, ever experienced this.
Yeah.
I'll keep saying it over and over and over. And it was immediate at Art World. Anyway, I could go on and on. Okay.
Oh, please do.
Why don't
I don't know if you've noticed, but I've had a hard...
tissue.
Weeper. Okay, Nick. I want to ask you something about like prospective artists.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to someone who wants to paint or wants to draw or wants to write, but is afraid of criticism? And how do you handle that? Because I'm sure not everybody loves your art.
Yeah.
I don't know how that could possibly be, Nick.
Because they're cray-cray.
And if you point them out to me, I'll take care of them.
Awesome.
Is that okay?
There's one person
there
in the
one
back
person?
here. No.
Anybody? John.
It was John.
Come up here. No, you don't. Oh, no. You raised your hand.
Now it becomes a cage match.
I don't.
Throw down.
Bring it.
Yeah. What was the question?
I asked about, like, how do you talk to people? First of all, like, how do you manage criticism? And what would you say to prospective artists who want to try their craft and afraid?
Well, first I would say, like, there's a myth that exists in our society, I think, that art isn't essential, that it's a luxury, or that it's for a specific class or specific type of people. And I think a lot of that's fueled by what gets promoted in media. Like, we see images from Art Basel of a banana taped to a wall.
Yep.
And of course that's going to turn off a lot of people and be like, that's art. But I think art is absolutely essential, and a big part of it is because the creative principle is in all of us, and we create in our daily life all the time, from the clothes we pick out, the music we listen to, what we watch for entertainment. Everything is coming back to that creative principle and being the author of our life. And so I think it's in everybody to manifest their creative principle through a specific art form, like painting or drawing or sculpture. So I say just do it, and don't care what anybody thinks about what you're doing. It takes a certain level of guts, I think, it takes a little guts to start, and then it takes a little bit more guts to actually share that because of the vulnerability of it. But I think that that's part of the excitement of life, is that we get to take chances like that. And I think that vulnerability, it's a humbling part of each person to be able to say, just rip open your chest and be like, this is me.
I'm a little curious as well, and I'm going to go way, way back actually to your father's death, because I'm kind of curious as you're talking if it gave you an appreciation for life.
Absolutely.
And an ability to live every day to the fullest.
To try?
Yeah, try it.
Yeah.
To try.
I mean, there's a lot of, it's easy to make it sound romantic and I had this tragedy thing and, it bred artwork and all of this, but it's also maybe a little too much whiskey, a little too much fast food. It's had a lot of other bad things that have come with it that took a long time to get through those things. So, yeah. So while, there's this appreciation for life, it's also been a path to find that again. Can I ask if the audience can ask any questions?
You can ask, and then we will say, yes, of course.
Oh.
You can.
Because I'm curious if anybody has anything.
Anybody wants to?
Nobody has any questions.
Don't be afraid.
Asked it all.
And feel free to come up. Please come up. You want to sit on the couch? Oh, you want to
I have room on both sides. Everybody, group photo.
I'm curious what your driving value is.
So I kind of have 4. And the first one is wellness, health and wellness, so mental, psychological, physical. Second's creative expression.
Third?
Blanking on
Gold shoes.
Doug.
3.
Just
Doug. My driving value is Doug.
I mean, no, creative expression, health and wellness, creative expression. I know number 4 is connectivity, human relationships. And I'm totally blanking on number
We have to know.
3.
We can't end the episode until we know number 3.
So we're going to sit in silence until you come up with it. And we're going to stare at you.
Okay, you could get back to us on it.
Any other questions? Leslie?
Back to the men without eyes and reflecting the soul. Could you talk more about what that means to you?
Yeah. Again, it's really just begging the question. I don't know that I have an answer to that question. It's begging the question, does soul exist and what is its nature? I believe soul exists. I can't describe what it is or put words to it other than maybe it's our spirit. I typically tend to believe that we are like a spirit or spiritual being having a human experience. That kind of, it's cliche, but I really do think that is there. There's been so many experiences that I've had and my family have had with people on the other side showing up somehow where it's okay, there's something there. And whether or not that there is out there or it's in here and we're projecting it ourselves, I don't know, but it's a question that I like to play with, and
Do you feel like the masculine is less connected to the soul and their soul experience?
I would almost say yes, because I think women are maybe closer to the creative process just because of the nature
Birth canal?
Birth, and nurturing
Full
and
circle.
birthing. I think that there's a closer connectivity to creation, and so that's very possible. Whereas, I don't know.
I can't wait to see my piece. And what the eyes look like.
I might paint you pregnant. Long neck, pregnant.
Oh my God, this is getting better.
With a hairline and chins.
And chins, yeah.
Rob, did you have a question?
I was curious to know when you felt your artwork had an impact. When was the first time you realized that the art you were doing impacted other people in a way that was meaningful to you?
Well, the first time it had an impact, not a deep impact, but where it was all right, this is kind of cool, and I got an ego boost. I wasn't a very popular kid, and I was in grade school, and I was at a friend's house, and they knew I could draw. And my friend's older brother had like a Sports Illustrated pinup thing on their wall.
Of course he did.
Yeah. And my friend was like, "Can you draw that?" And it was a challenge. And I drew it.
Yeah.
And I was like the coolest kid.
Was
for
it like
10
Pamela?
minutes.
Pamela
I was so
Anderson?
cool in their eyes. And then that faded again. But it was like,
great.
wow, okay, something I just drew impressed other people. Yeah. That was the first time that I had that experience where it actually felt deeper, more profound level. Probably it was one of my very first long neck paintings, if not the first. A piece called Bonjour Tristesse, which means hello to sorrow or hello sadness. And it was, so my gallery used to be on East Hennepin. It was in the basement at that gallery. And a friend of mine, Oli, saw that piece and got weepy, and he ended up buying it. And then we still talk about that day and that piece. And I've done multiple iterations of that painting since, but yeah, that was probably the first dramatic moment where it was like, okay.
Because
art
you're
can really touch
creating
people.
soulmates.
You know, it's
like crazy to think
And what's
about.
interesting is I can't stop talking about it.
Right.
Like, I think that's the other piece is it's so powerful that I've told this story to like lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
And so, I have to, when you're not there, I have to go, on my own. And it sounds awkward coming from me after my own story. So, you have a question?
I'm wondering how much your day-to-day variation in the mood that you're in impacts your art. It seems like you'd have to maintain a certain vision over many different fluctuations in mood. Or do you pivot depending on how you're feeling every day?
That almost, like once I'm at the easel, that's its own zone. So whatever happened during the day, that doesn't really, I mean, if I'm not listening to anything, I might replay stuff in my head while I'm painting. Like if I'm frustrated about something or somebody said something or did something, I'll replay that in my head in situations where I'm always winning. Like, that person.
You're re-narrating the story.
Narrating, totally.
An empowered narrative.
Totally. But that doesn't affect what I'm actually painting because that vision is kind of zeroed in. So that once I'm at the easel, whatever my mood is externally, the painting it'll change, but I don't know how perceptibly. The changes aren't so much from my mood once I'm painting, it's more what the painting's dictating. So in my head, I might have thought, I want her in a red dress, and then I start painting red, and it's like, nope, that's wrong. Wipe that down, start over. So I let the painting dictate at that point. But yeah.
Would you be okay with people going back and seeing where you sit?
Absolutely.
Because you are midway through a painting right now. Mm-hmm. I noticed today.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating because I wonder how all of these started and where they were mid-piece.
Yeah.
And a piece that we looked at last Sunday is completed and on the easel, I believe.
It's not complete.
It's not complete.
It's not. It's close.
Even
Okay.
better.
It's very close. Yeah.
And you've started another one.
Mm-hmm. I have 8 going at the moment.
Oh,
So I have
which
a
kind of goes
show.
to your question, like mood and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually work on multiple pieces, not 8
Wow.
at one time, but I have a show October 7th
Okay.
that I'm finishing up for at Gallery 360. And so I'm trying to finish up a number of new pieces.
I love it.
And as each layer dries on one, I jump to another and work on that one, let that layer of paint dry, and jump to another.
Darren, you have a question?
So how did your father's death affect your mother and subsequently your relationship with her and your siblings?
Yeah, that's interesting because, so my dad was great with me, but with the other kids, my dad was an alcoholic and quite abusive. And so my siblings and mother had a way different experience than I did. And I remember, I think it was one of my sisters told me once that my mom told him the day I came home, "You're not fucking this one up."
Wow.
And it was like, all right, that was my dad, So they had a very traumatic experience with him. So I don't know that there was a lot of love loss when he passed. My experience with him was very different. And I would imagine or I can imagine that for my mom, in one sense, it was a relief that he was gone, but it also made it really difficult because we didn't have that income coming in. We just had her income from being a church cantor, which wasn't much. So we instantly became quite poor. But it bonded her and I together quite a lot. Yeah.
Could you speak to your use of the gold and the process and reasoning behind using gold in so many of your pieces?
Absolutely. So I've been working gold into the paintings again more recently. I did in the past.
Like the one behind us.
Like the one behind us. And part of that is inspiration from Russian and Byzantine iconography. So I got really into that in my early 20s, and one of my favorite artists was Gustav Klimt, who worked with a lot of gold leaf, and I saw this connection between his work and iconography. And what captured me about iconography was that an icon isn't something that's just a work of art, but it's a spiritual sort of talisman that people would turn to for thanks or for asking in prayers, and they made it a focal point in their homes. And that was kind of what I wanted my artwork to become, is that it's not just a pure decorative element in a home, but it's a focal point and something that leads to contemplation. And then the gold leaf in specific, so I learned how to I took an intensive icon writing workshop where we made traditional icons in egg tempera. And the gold leaf, every part of the process has a esoteric meaning behind it. And with the gold leaf, what they would do is anywhere there's gold leaf, they would paint or lay down liquid red clay, let that dry, then they would burnish it with a wolf's tooth. And then when they're ready to put the gold leaf on, you would breathe hot air onto the clay, and that heat would be enough heat and moisture to ignite the glue in it, and then you'd put the gold leaf down. And that was mimicking God making man out of the earth and out of clay. And so it represents spirit and kind of our beingness. So that's kind of why I do that now. Not the religious endpoint, but spirit. Yeah.
Do you start with a sketch or do you go straight to canvas?
Mostly sketches, yeah. Once in a while, I'll crop together images in Photoshop and play with stuff, but mostly it's sketching, and then I'll transfer the sketch to the panel and then paint from there.
I feel like you have an example of that somewhere I saw last time I was here.
A panel with a sketch on it?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I've got one of those in the back I can share with you.
Any other questions?
What
Nick,
a day.
Right. We cannot be more grateful for the time you've spent with us and shared your very, very personal experience and adventure as my favorite artist, for sure. You can say
Mine too. Mine too. Sign me up.
Right?
I feel abundant. I feel
And
very
buoyant.
Where are those tissues?
And grateful.
Do you want to do yoga right now? I don't. Just FYI, I do not. And this is, of course, the Rogue Buddha Studio in Northeast Minneapolis. In case we did not reference that before, we want to make sure that's where we're at today. And of course, you can see the sign behind us. Anyone can contact you there. Where else can they contact you? Social media?
My Tinder account is
Tinder,
Bumble.
But like, I just kept on thinking, like, you're creating soulmates for so many people. I think Doug and I should create a soulmate for you.
Well, we have a retreat coming up
maybe
for
they
singles.
already exist.
And I don't know if I told you, Nick, but we're raffling you off.
Yes!
Is there any problem with that?
No, let's do it.
You'll be partnered
Speaking
by
about
the end of
vulnerability,
the
living once, do it. Let's do it.
Highest bidder.
Okay, so besides Tinder, where can people find you?
Instagram. I'm on Instagram, both as Nicholas Harper, Fine Art, Rogue Buddha Official. There's some dude who started using Rogue Buddha.
Come on.
I started that 25 years ago, and I'm late to all tech.
Do you know what?
So
I'm going to send
If
one
he's
of your
listening.
paintings to haunt him.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so Rogue Buddha Official, Instagram, Facebook, now TikTok.
Oh, wow. You're
Really?
so cool.
Yeah.
Are you a
embracing-
Snapchatter?
No.
I don't even know what that is really, so I just brought it up because I know it's something.
I don't get Snapchat and I
snapper.
don't get Twitter.
Are you on Instacart?
Instacart.
Oh, that's where you buy food. Okay. That's
No. Uber Eats, you can find me on I'll deliver on Friday night.
DoorDash? Do you have a profile on DoorDash? Can you order art to be delivered in 2 hours?
Actually, that I could probably do. In
That's
the Twin
not a
Cities
bad
metro area.
marketing strategy.
No, I do deliver in the Twin Cities.
Do you?
Install, yeah.
Are you going to deliver my painting?
For a fee, yeah.
Oh.
Yes, I do it for free. Yes.
For Doug.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I could
I'll
lift
deliver
it.
And now we are going to do our sign off, which usually Doug and I crack each other up behind closed doors and sometimes
we?
have to do it 500 times. But now we're going to do it in front of a live audience.
That's really special because
Wait,
I don't know
quick.
what we're saying. Go
We're
ahead.
not fine, but what?
We'll figure it out.
Oh, I got one.
Do you really? Okay. Go.
So, if you got value from today's episode, which we know you did, so don't try to pretend that you didn't. But if you did, like, subscribe, share with your friends and family, or even your enemies, because they need to know about us.
They do, including the guy who stole Rogue Buddha Studio.
Yeah.
We're going to find him.
We're going to haunt his ass.
We're going to haunt his ass with your paintings. We're going to just send him one picture a day.
He's going to
He's
see
not going to
this
sleep.
and feel so
He is.
bad.
Oh, yeah. That's why we're in business. We're therapists.
To make people feel bad. You're welcome.
You're
Make them feel
welcome.
bad, then they come.
$200 an hour, please. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Wait, that's
Oh,
it,
is it
isn't
mine
it?
now?
Yeah.
And if you have any questions about relationships, if there's any question you have about family, friends, coworkers, anything, that thing that's your neck, what is it called? Okay. I can't believe you two say it at the same time. Herlotta. We'renotfine.com. Submit all your questions. You can be anonymous. You can put your name. If you are the guy who stole your Twitter, what is it? Instagram cart? I don't know what it is.
Instagram,
Okay.
Rokuda, yeah.
Yeah, I don't love it.
We're
but if you're that
watching you.
person,
So
if you
I'm
could let us know who you are.
official.
Okay.
He
Yeah.
is _official. He's the orig.
The OG.
The OG. And if you want to find us on Instacart,
Where do you find us on Instacart or DoorDash?
Douglas L. Jensen with an EN,
Sweet.
Dr. Talia Jackson, and We're Not Fine Pod.
Can I say I noticed
YouTube.
that?
Oh, you did?
You're Dr.
Yes, I
Talia,
am.
and you're
I'm just
He's
Doug.
Just Doug.
They call me just Doug.
just Doug.
Dougie Fresh.
Doug. Just Doug.
That's his new name on Instagram.
It's just. Do you like it? Here you go, Nick. This one.
He left you hanging. That's
So, one last comment. I really want to thank all of you for coming. This was so much fun having you all here. I hope you liked the Prosecco. I hope you enjoyed the podcast episode with Nick. We can't wait to do this again. We hope all of you
this
come
was
again. You are
amazing.
so supportive to us, and your support means everything. So thank you all.
And I also really want to thank our team
We have an amazing team.
that literally is getting paid with Prosecco and lunch from time to time. And we love you all so much.
And Nick is giving you each a piece of art.
So the first one is Serenity.
That's mine! By the way, when I came back to make the purchase, Nick said some woman walked in yesterday and gave me a cash for this painting. I'm like,
Such a stinker.
you're joking, right? I was devastated. But we've obviously become friends, so you're giving me a lot of shit today. And remember, we're not fine.
But at least you have eyeballs.